بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. الصلاة والسلام على اشرف الانبیاء والمرسلین خاتم النبیین ابی القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد
وعلى اهل بیته الطیبین الطاهرین. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. Assalamu alaikum, respected elders, community leaders, brothers and sisters. A very warm and special thank you and welcome to our respected scholars, Hujjat al-Islami wal-Muslimin, Sheikh Burhani Ghaznawi, and our brother Dr. Wahbi for their insightful speeches, guidances and insights over the last few nights. And we are so blessed to have Dr. Yunus Ford, one of our leading intellectuals, join us tonight in what I found to be one of the most beneficial speeches that I've heard so far about the condition of our people and what Imam Hussein alayhi salam can contribute in us ensuring that we are serving them in every aspect of their life. I'd like to first offer my condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, on such a tragic event, the tragedy of Karbala, and I extend those condolences to each and every one of you here today. Over the last few nights, we've been privileged to hear from a number of speakers on a diversity of topics, including youth engagement, the overarching Hazara condition, and how we can ensure that the message of Imam Hussein can continue with us. Whilst I don't find myself in a position to provide any new knowledge that those of us in the room, that you've heard from the esteemed speakers in the room, I want to perhaps provide a few reflections and take you with me on that journey as to how Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam can help us in this modern Australian society as we navigate that journey as Hazara Australians. My focus is for us to reflect, and I invite you all very simply to reflect with me as to why Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is important to you, and why the tragedy of Karbala, so many years after, can bring this many people under one roof, under one message, trying to make a difference. I want us to then reflect as to how that message in Karbala can be implemented in our daily lives, in our individual lives and collective society, and then how those messages can be transformed to contribute and give back to this society and those overseas in Afghanistan. Now, in those reflections, if you found that your connections with Imam al-Hussein and your being here tonight is one of emotion, that is okay. Oftentimes, our relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is an emotional one. This is not a wrong way to look at Imam al-Hussein. Indeed, our ulama and our imams have encouraged us to cry and have an emotional connection with Imam al-Hussein. Imam Rida alayhi salam has said, if there is anyone you should be crying about, it should be Imam al-Hussein. But I think for me, and as I reflect on the remarkable speeches over the last couple of nights, the connection of Imam al-Hussein with us is a deep, logical one. It shows us that Islam, the Islam of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is not just an emotional religion. It's a logical way of life. And so when we think about Imam al-Hussein's journey from Mecca to Medina to Karbala, we think of it as an emotional one that ended up in quite a big tragedy, one that supersedes the Shia Islam and goes beyond and becomes a universal message, correct? But it also is a movement that started with his grandfather, Prophet Muhammad, continued with his father, Imam Ali, and with his brother, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. And so Imam al-Hussein's journey in Karbala and his tragedy in Karbala is not a singular event, it's a movement that you and I have been blessed with to continue that message forward. Our blessings are, alhamdulillah, being here, we've been raised in the cradles of mothers who have taught us the love of Fatima al-Zahra and fathers who have worked so hard to instill the love of Ahlul Bayt in our hearts. That blessing is part of that movement that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam continued. And so when we come back to the logical side of Imam al-Hussein, it truly shows us the differentiating factors as to why Imam Hussein alayhi salam has the power to ignite such fire in us, that every year, for the most part of the last 1,000, we've gathered in these programs for once a year for 10 to 13 nights. Each of you come to these programs. That kind of inspiration cannot be found elsewhere. And I'd like to think that it's more than just about the crying, the chest beating. While those are really valid and important to continue the tradition, there is more to be said about Hussein ibn Ali. And so when we take the emotion out of it and we talk about Imam Hussein, we think about what was Imam Hussein alayhi salam trying to do. And it goes back to what Prophet Muhammad was trying to do, and that is to better the human condition. And I want to perhaps pause for a moment and create a difference between the abstract and bring it to the more tangible day-to-day life. It's really easy to say that we are all followers of Imam Hussein and we're here to follow his path. But I want to ask you a question. After the 13 nights of محرم, where does Imam Hussein alayhi salam live in your life? Is it once a week of Ziyarat Ashura? Where does Imam Hussein alayhi salam exist in your life on a day-to-day basis? And this transcends age, gender. No matter if you're a university student, you're a worker, you're unemployed. I want you to reflect, and I want us to reflect on where Imam Hussein, Sayyid Zainab, Abul Fadl Abbas lives with us on a day-to-day basis. Because once you remove the emotional connection that Muharram brings, you are left with the logical. And human beings, alhamdulillah, Allah has created us to be rational, logical beings. And so for us, we need to then reflect, where does Imam Hussein alayhi salam meet us? And the beauty I found, as someone who's grown up in a country like Australia, where we're not exposed to the Islamic rituals on a day-to-day basis, I found that Imam Hussein and his school meets you where you are. Whether you are someone who prays 5 times a day, does their nightly prayers, fasts Monday and Thursday as has been prescribed, Imam Hussein will meet you there and ask more of you. Or alternatively, if you are someone who's struggling with your prayers, who's struggling with your hijab, who's struggling with being able to be kind and truthful, Imam Hussein alayhi salam meets you exactly where you are. And the story of Karbala, that's the beauty of it. It's that it's not about all the pomp and the prayers, because if Imam Hussein alayhi salam thought that Islam can be saved with him just praying and fasting, he would have stayed in Mecca and Medina. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam recognized that for the human condition, for his generation that was so corrupt, only 50 years after the Prophet, for that to be able to rejuvenate, and for the generations that are to follow to rejuvenate Islam, there must be more. So I want us to then reflect as to where your journey is and where it's leading you. And I specifically want to perhaps target the young people in the room who sometimes may be struggling with finding their faith, as I have many, many times. That struggle is real because you are not constantly exposed to the message of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt in your everyday life. The externals of life, whether that's on social media, at university, in schools, do not have the rich Islamic ethos that we are taught in our families and our communities. So how do you then have a Husseini mindset in your day-to-day activities? I think for that to happen, you need to reflect, like I said before, what values of Karbala do you align with? Because there are many companions and family members of the Prophet that have so much to give to you. Whether it's Ali al-Akbar, Abul Fadl al-Abbas, Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha, each individual carries with them attributes of their lives that if we were to just choose one for a period of a week, 14 days, 40 days to build that habit, I promise you that as young people, we can become Husseinis in our day-to-day life. And that's important because I think when we come to these programs and we talk about Imam Hussein, we make him an abstract concept that is untenable. We can't reach. But I think that's a fallacy that we've created. And it's unfortunately not a fault of anyone per se, but it's an important difference that we need to make as young people between the Imam Hussein as the spiritual figure and the Imam Hussein of our day-to-day lives. and how that then translates to our involvement in the Australian community. Over the past few nights, you've recognised that most of us will probably never set foot in Afghanistan again. And if we do, I don't think you'll be one of favour. So we are going to build a community here. How does that look like for the next generation and the next generation after that? And that cannot be only maintained through the 10 nights of محرم. We need to be instilling a deeper level of love and compassion and care for Imam Hussein's message in our youth, so that that message does not die down with these programs. So that when I or someone else or a sister or a brother is out there in university giving speeches representing this community, an external member of the community who's not a Shia, who's not a Hazara, can see those attributes without knowing Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So I urge the youth to get involved. I know I often say this in most of my talks in the community, but I cannot stress enough how important it is for the young people to get involved in the fabric of building Australian society. There are decision makers, as Dr. Yunus alluded to, that are making decisions for your day-to-day life. They're going to be impacting your communities, your education, your families, your businesses. You need to be able to be partaking in those decision-making processes so that your community is not disadvantaged. There are so many people here and overseas that would like to see the Hazara community fail. That is a fact. But it's important for us to align ourselves with what Imam Hussein alayhi salam taught, with courage, with kindness and compassion, so that we can rebuild a society here that is sustainable and that is one aligned with our Shia Hazara values. So I'm urging the young people, as you listen to these speeches, as you listen to these talks, to really consider your role in today's society, not just in these majalis, but outside. How involved are you in decisions at the government level, at the non-profit level, at the corporate level that are impacting your families? Many of our fathers have small businesses, and when there is legislation going to impact those communities and small businesses, how much are you involved in making sure that your voices are heard? And I really want you to reflect on that, because Imam Hussein's message isn't just about crying and being here 10 nights. It's about shaping your community, and I truly believe that these Hazara young people amongst us are some of the brightest stars and some of the most intellectual people I've met. But it needs a little bit of love and nurturing to get them from taking Imam Hussein's message and pushing us to becoming involved in our day-to-day Australian society. And without taking much of your time, I know the Sheikh heeded to us keeping the English portions short yesterday. I want to end on perhaps re-asking my question to you about where does Imam Hussein alayhi salam live in your life after the 10th of Muharram? Because it's important that as we reflect and we move on, only a couple of more nights left, that Imam Hussein alayhi salam makes a presence, and his presence is felt in your lives from now until the next Muharram, inshallah. And I pray that, inshallah, we are blessed with the ziyarat of Imam Hussein in this life and his shafaat in the next. Sorry for taking so much of your time, and inshallah I'll see you all next Muharram. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.